My wife and I met at Stanford back in 1960. She was a doctoral candidate. I was getting my master's. Um, she had done everything for her doctorate except write her dissertation. And we were married and we had our first child, and it just became more and more difficult. And I had indicated to my everlasting shame that I wasn't at all comfortable with the notion of Dr. and Mrs. and Mr. Koppel. I mean, that really offended my male pride. So I had not, far from encouraging her to finish her PhD, I had discouraged her. And she had given in to my male pride. But it had always been a source of great shame to me that I had done that. So in the mid-70s, and I think it was probably in 76, I was doing the Saturday News. My wife, I said to her, why don't you go back and finish your PhD, do your dissertation, I'll take some time off. And she said, you know, frankly, I don't even want to do that. What I'd like to do is go to law school. And I said, okay, I'll take a year off so you can get that first toughest year of law school behind you. And I knew that if I went to ABC Management and said, may I please have a year off so I can do this, they would have said no. And frankly, if I'd been in their position, I would have said the same thing. So I went to see Bill Sheehan, who was then the president of ABC News, and was a good friend. And he said, good, I'm glad you're coming up to see me because I've got a couple of things I want to talk to you about. The two things he wanted to talk to me about were, A, because he went first, A, how would you like to be an executive? And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I'm looking for a senior vice president of ABC News, and I think this is about the time that you have to decide, do you want to go on being on the air for the rest of your professional life, or would you like to run a news division? And if you'd like to run a news division, then here's a chance to do it. And I said, I know what I'm good at and I know what I'm not good at, and I would be a terrible executive, and I would hate to do that, and so thank you, but no thank you. He said, all right, I've got one other offer. He said, you may have heard that Barbara Walters is coming over to ABC from NBC, and she and Harry Reasoner are going to co-anchor the evening news. How would you like to be the executive producer of that program? And I said, Bill, even if I hadn't come up here today to tell you what I'm going to tell you, I can't think of anything I would rather not do than be the executive producer of that program. I pity the poor fool who's going to do that. That's, you know, it's going to be a very tough program to do. He said, I know, that's why I'm offering it to you. And I said, thank you, but no thank you. And he said, all right, what do you want to talk about? I said, I'm quitting. And he said, why? And I said, well, because Grace Ann is going to go to law school, and I don't think that, you know, you should be asked to hold a job open for me for a year. If at the end of that year you want to hire me back, that's great. I'd love to come back. I really have no desire to leave ABC. But if you don't, you should at least have that option. And he said, look, let me think about what we can do. I mean, if you're determined to do this, we'll find a way to make it work. And he called me back a couple of days later and said, look, we can put a microphone in your house and lay a line, and I want you to do a radio commentary every day. And I want you to go on doing the Saturday News on Saturdays. Can you do that? And I said, sure. And he said, all right, we'll put you on half salary for a year, and you'll do those two things, and then at the end of the year you come back. So he was really very, very generous about it, and for the better part of a year, it was probably the busiest time of my life, because I'd get up at 5 in the morning, and I'd get breakfast ready for the kids and Grace Ann and get them off to school. do the carpool on those days when I had the carpool. Then I'd read the papers, sit down, write my commentary, which had to be ready by 11 in the morning. Then I'd go out and do whatever shopping there was to do. Then I'd come back. I was writing a novel at the time with Marvin Kalb, and I'd work on the novel for 2 or 3 hours. Then it was time to do the carpool again, pick up the kids, make dinner. Then Grace Ann would come back, and she would do things like the laundry, and she and I would share the cleaning chores. I mean, I didn't do the whole job even when I was theoretically doing the whole job. And for a year, I became far more sensitive. I mean, I heard myself saying many of the things that my wife and your wife and every wife in America has at one time or another said. You know, I put the roast in the oven because you told me you were going to be home at 7, and it's now 7:45, and dinner is burned to a crisp. And where were you, and why couldn't you call? Or take your shoes off, I just washed the kitchen floor. And it's amazing what empathy you can develop in a very short time when you are the one doing the washing of the kitchen floor and cooking the meal. And it was a meaningful year. But as my wife never tires of pointing out to me, she's been doing it for 41 out of 42 years. I did it for 1.